Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from whichever part of the world you're joining, and even good evening. We have guests from India tuning in today as well. Thank you so much for joining us on our Data Buzz Fireside Chat series. We are back this Saturday with another amazing guest, Nivedita. Welcome.
Thank you, Supreet.
So we have a fun and hopefully a conversation which is full of learning for people who want to pivot in a different field, who want to do something different, and hopefully this will serve as an inspiration for everyone who's watching and will watch our recorded video. So Nivedita, why don't I let you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nivedita Mahesh, and very good morning from Arizona. It's bright and early here. So I am a recent PhD graduate from Arizona State University, and I did my PhD in astrophysics. Prior to this, I got my master's in electrical engineering from UCLA. So I did pivot from one field to another. But home is in India, from Coimbatore. I'm from Coimbatore, where I did my undergrad. I did all my schooling and undergrad in Coimbatore. Uh, and in terms of introduction, I'll also introduce myself as I'm a dog mom. My little baby's called Ocean. And for my next steps, I am a recent postdoctoral scholar at CalTech, and I should be moving to the sunny California soon.
Wow, wow, that's so amazing and so different. So let's start with this, right? You did your master's, like I think many other international students here. So what inspired you to pivot into PhD instead of the industry?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, even after my undergrad, so I got my undergrad in instrumentation engineering. So we'll
Right.
backtrack and start from there. So as like every other student, our college just had placements, and I was very excited to like try my best for some of the best companies our college offered. And I did get an industry position in a company called Asia Brown Boveri, which is basically power controls and your power grids. And if you haven't seen a transformer on the road that has the name ABB, you need to stop by and do that today. So I was in industry for 8 months as soon as I graduated my undergrad. But I felt something was missing. So one thing that I've enjoyed, like this might sound geeky, nerdy, but one thing that I've genuinely enjoyed since I was growing up is creating projects, solving problems in science.
Yeah.
I blame or compliment this to my dad for doing it. So even from a very young age, like since I was 10 or 12, if I learned any concept, my dad was keen that we try an experimental part of it at home. He also made me think more than what the subjects made you do. He made me think more than what the exams made me do. So, for example, if I learned eclipses, I still remember this very vividly. We went into my granddad's room, switched off because my granddad was not there at that time. So, switched off the lights, used a little candle, used different balls, sizes of balls, and
Wow.
my dad explained, see, this is how the eclipse looks. And it's
Mm,
always been that I want to try something more. So when
yeah.
I was in ABB, I felt like I was doing it was wonderful. It was a dream job in my field, and I felt
Yeah.
like I was doing something directly to my field, but
Yeah.
it was the same thing again and again. I wanted new
Yeah.
problems. I wanted to solve more things. So that's where the change happened, and I went to Raman Research Institute. I had my very first research gig. Um, we had engineering problems to solve, but with an astrophysics focus. So I was just excited because I had an electrical engineering problem to solve, something that I knew. But as I was in RRI for almost a year and a half, and I got
Mm,
exposed to how many unknowns and how many exciting problems still is open, I was very keen on continuing to do research. I was very keen on doing research specifically in astrophysics because there's still so much to know.
yeah. Yeah. So how was that pivot for you? I mean, how challenging and what all steps did you do to even pivot into this field?
Right. Okay. So that was it was a transfer. It was a process, if I may.
Mm,
So even though after undergrad I did my research in Raman Research Institute, and I was already kind of keen that I want to do an astrophysics route,
yeah.
after that, I was like, okay, at this point, I was not sure. Like, okay, I didn't have the formal education. When I say formal, I didn't have a formal master's degree in
Yeah.
antennas. Instrumentation engineering is slightly different. And the electrical engineering that the astrophysics needed was very much like receiver circuits or antenna engineering, which I didn't have formal education in. So what I told myself is, okay, let's go get a master's degree in electrical engineering. Let's simultaneously take some astrophysics courses and still see, with this formal education, do I still love astrophysics enough to do a PhD? Because that's a commitment.
Yeah.
So I came, I still did electrical engineering, but I did a lot of courses, which was extra from what any of the electrical peers of mine were doing. So I took a lot of courses. I did an additional research project in astrophysics. So basically, I got another minor, just not on paper,
Hmm.
just so that I knew I still liked it. And then, even in my master's, I also enrolled to do a research project at CalTech, even then, which was additional to any of my coursework or degree requirements.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we have to do that little extra thing if we really want something different from your peers, right? So,
Correct.
so
Correct.
that was my transition. It was just calculated, practical choices that I made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were, I think that's one question that I get asked because most of the time, once people complete their masters, they're at a
Yeah.
crossroads, right? Like, okay, if I want to put in industry, I know that I need to do the preparation and all the prep work for interviews and everything. But if
Yeah.
I want to transition to PhD, as you already mentioned, that you need to do some kind of prep work, right? Take some courses and everything. But apart from that, how did you go about the entire process of finding a professor, finding a research area, and other things?
All right. Okay. Yeah. So that also was another. So I would keep saying projects, research,
Correct.
wherever you can get. Let it be like a 4 week stint. Let it be a year and a half at Raman Research Institute, or a couple of semesters with another professor. So for me, I think what stood out in my application was I had enough research projects even before I started my PhD. That
Mm,
is one. Whatever opportunity you can think of, it looks very different for everyone else, but look for them. My point is to look for opportunity, whatever is there. I know I
mm,
had something different because I was in the US, but that doesn't mean there's not enough back at home either, because I think one of my biggest research project was from India, Raman Research
mm,
Institute.
mm,
And the next important thing is networking. Tell
mm,
everybody you know. I told my electrical engineering professor also, this is my goal. I want to pivot to astrophysics. Help me there. I spoke to my professors in astrophysics in UCLA, and I'm like, I know I'm from an engineering background, but I want to shift. What do I need to do? Or who are the people I can talk to? So both of them introduced me to a lot of people. My professor back at Raman Research Institute, I kept in touch. This is one thing that I've learned. Wherever you go, keep in touch with those people. We all make these promises, but stay true to that. That is one thing. I know we can get
mm,
busy with the next gig, next gig, next gig. Your first mentor,
mm.
you tend to lose in touch. The
Yeah,
important thing is not to lose in touch with your first mentor or your other mentors along the way. So each of them have introduced me to some brilliant people. My
yeah.
first research project outside electrical engineering, outside UCLA in CalTech happened simply because I was in a crossroads, stuck with no internship, and I wanted to do something. I called up Ravi Subramaniam, my first mentor from RRI, told him my situation, and he introduces me to a very famous professor in CalTech, whose name is Srinivas Kulkarni, who happens to be the brother-in-law of Narayan Murthy.
Oh, wow.
He introduced me to him, and Srinivas Kulkarni very quickly the next day has a quick interview with me, asks my situation and asks my interest and background, and gives me my first outside my comfort zone research project in the US. So it was networking, and from there I've known a lot more people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I think I can't obviously stress this enough. Whenever even we speak here, most of our guests give us this suggestion, right? And even I do that to my mentees that
yeah,
harness the power of networking. Your
yeah,
next opportunity is somewhere there, but you just need to talk to the right people at the right time. And maybe it's not the right time, right? But you will ultimately land there. Just put it out there,
yes,
as you said,
yes,
right? So
So
that's
it's
so
true for academia also, not just
yeah,
industry. Yes, you're
exactly.
absolutely right.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And that's what I think is very important to know, right? Like we talk about industry and how networking is important, but
yeah,
you made a very good point that it's the same in academia as
yeah,
well. It's no
yeah,
different.
yeah,
That's great. And so tell us about your recent position. And actually, even before that, so once people complete PhD, I'm sure
mm,
that they have enormous options, right? So
yeah.
in your view, what were the options that you had and why did you go with your current position?
Right. Okay. So that's a good point. Question. So after, in general, after you finish your PhD, like my peers and I, a lot of us finished at the same time. There are a couple of opportunities, three general routes that I've seen, at least
Mhm.
from astrophysics and my cohort, was you could go into industry after this because a lot of skills. This is something if you've seen on LinkedIn, a lot of academic Twitter pages, is that even though we did research, but we did a lot of like coding, computing, data science. So a lot of these skills are directly transferable. One of my cohorts,
Yeah.
Janil, she is very successfully doing a job in data science, a brilliant astrophysicist, but she knew her goal was set that after she's done with research, she would like to go and contribute to the industry. Great. The other option one could do is get actually a faculty position afterwards. You could get a teaching position in an undergrad college because you're very much qualified to do that. Or you, the third option is what I picked, is basically you continue to do more research, you advance in your research. So we do postdoctoral um, careers. So you do independent research under a professor and then apply for a more advanced faculty position. Or you can still be in, like, obviously NASA, JPL, ISRO, if you would like to come back home. So I picked the postdoctoral route, and like grad school, it's applying. It's the same set of applications you sent to multiple colleges, which I
Hmm.
did. This is one thing, when one advice people ask me about grad school, it's a numbers game. Again,
Yeah.
make sure to maximize your chances, make sure to apply as many as possible. And yet again, when I applied to decently number of places for my postdoc, and I made some sensible choices also. So some you will apply which is slightly out of your reach, some would, like, that three tiers of application you always do, it's the same even year.
Hmm.
And so in terms of my postdoctoral application, I sent about 8 or 9. I had about four four acceptances, 4 or 5 acceptances, and I finally accepted. And the two things that I was really confused between was between a postdoctoral fellowship at MIT or the one at CalTech.
Hmm.
Then it came down to choosing CalTech because it's a smaller team, so I'll be a bigger contribution. In MIT is a bigger team, you might get lost. So it
Hmm.
was a personal choice. Of course, both the researchers, both the groups are great. I wanted to make a bigger contribution in a smaller team. So yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think one of the questions that we got when I uh, posted your post was, okay, what is the NASA Finest Fellow?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you pronounce it, but yeah, tell us about that.
You're right. It is the NASA Finest Fellowship. So it's a national fellowship, and it's one among the many. There are a lot more our
Okay.
fields offer. This is from NASA to encourage grad students to propose a project of their own, which they will do in collaboration with their academic advisor in their college. And usually, they select about 10 to 18% of applications get selected. It's a national fellowship. It's for the US industries, US universities. So in my third year, my professor Judd said, Nivedita, why don't you try? And let me tell you, NASA fellowship is one among the many fellowships again I tried. So this is
Mm.
the game wherever you go. You try for many and one does work out, or a little more than one might work out. So in 2018, I wrote this fellowship, where I proposed that we study the feasibility of placing a radio telescope on the moon. So we are at that point in astrophysics, or specifically radio astronomy, that a lot of searches, a lot of discoveries that we can make in radio astronomies can be better done on the moon.
Yeah.
We can talk more about that eventually, but so that was my project. It did get selected. It was one of the 26 of the 120 applications that was sent in. Um, But I think what helped me for that proposal is like I think there are three key takeaways that I took, made my application stand out. Again, when I wrote my applications, I spoke to so many people,
Mm,
not just my professor.
mm,
There were two other affiliate professors with my lab. I spoke to them. I told them, "This is my idea. What do you think? What would
mm.
you add to this?" The amount I have spoken, my idea started somewhere in November. By
Mm.
Feb, it looked so different.
Yeah.
I can't completely say it was my idea. It was my idea, but from so many learnings. I spoke to so many collaborations outside ASU also. This is what I'm thinking. What would you think? So sometimes it was just casual chats over lunch with some of my mentors. Sometimes it was a phone conversation. Sometimes it was a very formal chat. But the point that I learned was it was so important to think of your idea, talk to everyone you could think of in your field who can give
Mm.
you critics, who can give you
Correct.
feedback, who can improve your idea. And in my that was one thing. The second thing that I think really helped my proposal was naming these people. So I had an idea, I wanted to do this, but I said I'm going to do this aspect of the project with the help of this person because they are an expert,
Hmm.
and that is fine. And
Yeah.
I, one of the feedbacks I got is that I'm glad the person highlighted you can't possibly do everything on your own. You're going to be using the resources and experts around you to do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe I'm making my application weak by saying that, but no, I'm so glad somebody gave me a feedback saying that is important. Like, no one expects you to know everything. If you know everything, people give you a PhD already, right? So,
Yeah.
and the last thing I was saying, the three takeaways, the last thing was I got it proofread, reread. People in my field, outside my field, adjacent to my field so many times. And it was edited, critiqued, it was teared apart at some point. My professor was like, oh, this makes no sense. So, yeah, these are the three main things that make a fellowship work. And it was true. So, the CalTech was also a fellowship. I followed the same procedure, and I think it worked again.
Yeah, awesome. So you, I think, spoke about and touched upon one of the very important topics, and I think it's a soft skill, which is receiving feedback positively, because it's I feel it's a tough skill to acquire, right? Most of the time, it might hit us hard, or we might be like, yeah, and most of the people don't like to receive feedback, right? So how do you think you develop that thick skin to receive even negative feedback? Because feedback can be
Oh,
any.
I'm glad. Let it affect you. My initial thought was let it affect you. It does affect me. One night I'm just like, oh, I'm so bad. But it's great that develops into, oh, let me just show you. I can do better. You
Yeah.
know, it's like let it sink in. Let it sink in. Make you feel bad. That's what it works for me. It makes it, and then I'm like, no, it's there in me. Mujh mein hai. It's
Yeah.
there in me. I will show it to you. So I
Yeah.
need to do
Right.
better. You know, so yeah,
It's just, yeah, you just have, it's a process, I feel like, to
it's a
even
process.
process this.
Digest it,
Yeah.
digest it, accept it positively enough to be like, ah, let me show you. Get
Right.
that juice, I want to say. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. So you have, outside all of these amazing things that you're doing, I know that you have an initiative, Letter for Girls. So let's talk about that. How did you come up with that? What was your inspiration? How's it going? So yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So, Letters for Our Girls was co founded by my dear friend Pallavi Chakraborty and me. Um, it came about over a conversation in the pandemic, right? A lot of people did a lot of
Mm,
things over the pandemic. This is
yeah,
what we did. Um, one common theme, we were having a very deep conversation. One of the common themes that came out of a conversation was like, in a lot of walks of our life, okay, like at least for me, right, from instrumentation, in my instrumentation engineering, at least the gender ratio was fine. You come out of it in ABB, I was the only woman on the shop floor, which is where I worked for the 8 months. um in a way it was great that okay, there I was there to make a difference, like I was
yeah.
changing the ratio but with literally one drop in that ocean. um and then came RRI, which also showed I was in a radio astronomy lab. Now radio
Yeah,
astronomy is a confluence of two fields, electrical engineering and astrophysics, both of which the gender ratio is so so, but
yeah,
it's getting better. So again, I did not see many people like me.
Hmm.
Again, fast forward electrical engineering, our ratio in electrical engineering was slightly lower, 35% women to 65, I'm doing math on fly, 65% men. Um, and in that specialization in antenna engineering, that ratio dropped even more.
Hmm.
And then again, astrophysics ratio dropped more. So everywhere, the main theme, even Pallavi saw the same thing in her field. She did public policy. Um, she went on to work in an NGO, and then now she did business school in Darden. So the common theme we saw, the women's ratio was low, and women of color ratio was even lower.
Yeah.
So not seeing people like you makes a difference.
Yeah.
Sorry if you hear my little baby crying. It's too early for her. It's
Um,
Ocean and she's a little cracky in the morning.
no.
So saying that, we decided it's not that they don't exist. We are there, but we are
Yeah.
scattered and we're little droplets everywhere. So we wanted to start an initiative to highlight the success and achievements of different South Asian women in different fields, speak any walk of life. And that's why Letters for a Girl started. And we do have plans of doing some more. Right now, we are just highlighting achievements and talking about the journey, inspiring route that they've taken. The next thing is to directly start an initiative to have a conversation between these women mentors and girls back at home, back in India and
Got
South
it.
Asia. So that's
Wow.
Letters for a Girl. So if there are
Yeah.
people out there um, listening to us right now, and if you have a story to tell, and not just if you, I am sure each of you have a story to tell, a success letter to share, please reach out to us. Look for Letters for a Girls on LinkedIn or Instagram, whichever is your favorite platform. Please reach out. We would love to share your story and
Yeah.
your letter. Yeah.
This is so amazing. And I think one thing that I often ask, especially to my female guests, due to multiple reasons, is about imposter syndrome. As you said, we are all in droplets, and sometimes you might not have the required support system and all
Yeah.
of that, and such feelings are very common. So, in your journey, did you ever face it? Do you face it now? And how do you mitigate through it?
Oh my, I face this like, I feel like imposters and the levels of imposter syndrome is there at every
Yeah, yeah,
maybe now it's smaller and maybe now I know learn to handle it. The
yeah.
only way, the only way you can, I've got to, I think, maybe there are multiple ways. I should, my only way that has worked for me is push yourself a little more than you did yesterday. So, and I started with small things. My lab meetings, I used to sit in my first year lab meeting. Now I'm glad even the gender ratio in my lab has improved. When I joined the ASU lab, I was the only girl in the group.
Hmm,
And we were like 12 of us, postdocs, professors, students, undergrads, everyone.
hmm,
Um, imposter syndrome started there. In the lab meetings, I'll be like so scared to present or even ask a question on somebody else's research.
yeah,
Um, but the way I got over it, okay, this lab meeting, I struggle. Next lab meeting, I'm going to present with a little more confidence. The third lab meeting, I'm going to ask a question. Even if it's
yeah,
right or wrong, I'm asking a question. That is my goal. The fourth lab meeting, I will present without preparing and without being tensed. So slowly, I set myself
hmm,
these small, achievable goals that made me feel like, okay, I did it. It was not that bad. It makes me feel fine now. I belong in this group. Like, yes, my
yeah,
question made sense, and the results I'm giving in the lab is a good contribution. So these are achievable goals. Similarly, in conferences, my first conference, I was like literally a wallflower. I was in the corner, not talking.
hmm,
Like, my professor would pull me, no, Nivedita, you need to like talk. So again, achievable goals. The 3 days of the conference, the first time, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just like an electrical engineer who just joined astrophysics. It's not that we electrical engineers are any less, but that's my imposter syndrome saying. So then I
yeah,
played my card. I was like, you know, I am from electrical engineering. I understand the antennas better than you do. So this is what I think works. So slowly setting myself these goals in conferences, in lab groups, in classrooms, even in my coursework. I was like, why am I here? All of these have undergrad in astrophysics. They have a better background. Their questions make more
genuine.
sense. I
Yeah.
will walk into the class tomorrow, no matter what the question is, I'm going to ask it.
Hmm.
So I feel it's a process. Set yourself small goals in like, be better tomorrow than today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do one thing that you've never done tomorrow. And then you'll feel like, yes, you are capable, more than capable. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's I think some amazing suggestions right there. So we are almost heading to the end of our chat and end of this segue. So is there any advice that you would like to give your fellows who want to maybe pivot in this field, or any advice that you would like to share?
I mean, more than just feel, do something that makes you wake up from bed every morning. Like,
Hmm.
whatever that might be, make sure you think you get there's it doesn't stop at 30, or even I'm almost 31 now. So that passion, that drive, that excitement that I had in 18 when I had my first research gig is still there. Make sure to
Yeah.
get opportunities like that wants you like to get out of bed and do it. I was like, I have to
Hmm.
do this. I have to solve this issue. Without me, this observatory won't work. No, I mean, something like that, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So that do things that fuels your passion. That's my advice. And if you're doing that, I'm sure you'll find ways. I'm sure you'll prioritize networking. I'm sure you'll prioritize research in my field because you love it enough.
Yeah.
So whatever be it, whichever feel it, make sure to do what you love, and I'm sure you'll find ways of doing it. You will take the best advice that can come. If you don't do what you love, then it's time to sit and rethink what you want.
What
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I think that's some powerful advice. And Nivedita, thank you so much for bringing this great, vibrant energy on the table. And we could read through your passion, see through your passion that, how passionate you are about your
Thank
field.
you.
And I'm sure
Thank you.
I am inspired and I've got some energy to get through this weekend. And I'm sure a lot of people
I'm
have.
glad. I must note for everybody listening that Supreet, your letter, so Supreet's letter and journey we shared in Letters for Others. And the day
Yeah.
I read your letter, both Pallavi and I was like, oof, yeah. Yeah, this is this. See, it gives me power. It makes me feel powerful. Yes, a fellow South Asian woman did it. We can do it too, and
Exactly.
it's very nice. So I'm glad I had this chance to talk to you, and I'm glad I saw your journey earlier. So I hope to keep in touch too.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing your journey with me, and actually, taking out some of the personal aspects I feel that people would not talk about every day. So, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
yeah.
And we will end this session. Thank you all for joining. And if you see this video on YouTube later, because it will be available on the Databuzz YouTube page, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Nivedita, and we will answer your questions.
Yes,
So,
happy to answer your questions anytime. Yeah, yeah. So
thank
yeah,
you. Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.